Hey bookworms, it's Jade from Bedtime Bookworm and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm here to tell you about 10 series that I'm hoping to finish in 2020. As I mentioned in my last video, I'm trying to reframe how I look at my series goals for next year, and one idea that I had was to make a goal of a list of series that I want to try and finish. Looking back over the last couple of years, somehow I finished 7 series each in the last 2 years. That was definitely not on purpose, but that gave me an idea of around how many series was reasonable to try and finish in a year. I looked through all of the series that I'm reading and I came up with a list of 10 series that I feel like it's possible for me to finish in the next year. Some of them are going to be really easy to finish, some of them might be a little harder, but if I'm making it a goal, I think that I can get close to finishing all of them and at least finish most of them. If I don't finish all 10 of these series, I'm not going to kick myself too hard. I do think that is a little bit of a lofty goal, but I'm setting the goal a little bit high to try and motivate myself to finish as many of these 10 as I can. Let's start with the ones that I see as being the easiest to finish because I don't have much work to do for them. The first one that I want to mention is The Conqueror Saga by Kiersten White. I have been talking about finishing the series all year. I only have the last book in the trilogy to read, and that's Bright We Burn. I have checked Bright We Burn out of the library more than once over the last few months. It is technically a week before the end of the year right now, but in all honesty, I don't see it happening before the end of the year. If I don't get to it in the next week, then I definitely see myself reading this in January or maybe February, but either way, this series is being finished in early 2020. If you haven't heard of this series before, the first book is And I Darken, and it is a Vlad the Impaler retelling, but gender swapped. It definitely has a very historical fiction feel. It's set during the Ottoman Empire, and my favorite thing about the series are the characters. They are very complicated characters, and their relationships with each other are very complicated. I really love the second book, which I read back in April. I don't know why I haven't picked up the next book. I really wanted to read it in the fall, and it just ended up not happening. So I need to get my butt in gear and read this one soon, but it's definitely a series that I will be finishing either in 2020 or very small chance that I'll read it in the next week and it'll be done before 2020. Another series that I see myself completing in early 2020 is the This Mortal Coil trilogy by Emily Sue Veda. The third and final book is coming out in January. As soon as my library gets a copy, I am putting myself on that holds list, and I hope to read it really quickly. I read the second and middle book in the series early this year, I think also in January, right when it came out, and it was so much fun, and I am really excited to see how this trilogy is going to end. This is a science fiction post-apocalyptic series where there has been a virus outbreak, and it's killed most of the Earth's population. In this world, people have control panels in their arm where they can hack their own DNA, so it combines computer programming and genetics, and I love it so much. It is action-packed, crazy twists and turns, so much fun, and I cannot wait to read the last book, and that is definitely happening in early 2020. Another one that I'm hoping and planning to do in early 2020, it is on my winter TBR as were the previous two, is Imprison the Sky by A.C. Gallion. It is the second book in the Elemente duology. These are more like companion books. It's about different characters set in the same world. It's another one that I had originally hoped to get to in December, but my December reading's been a little bit slow, and it's not gonna happen. But I'm hoping that it does happen in January. I do already have it out from the library, so I'm really hoping to get to it soon. So that's 3 series that I solidly feel like are going to be finished in 2020, in early 2020, and I feel really good about that. Next, I have 3 series that I have started and are completed series that I think I can finish before the end of 2020. First, I have the First Law trilogy by Joe Abercrombie. I read the first book in this trilogy, The Blade Itself, earlier this year in April, I believe, and I really enjoyed it, and I've been planning on continuing on in this series, but it just hasn't happened yet. I did recently pick up both the second and third books on audiobook from Audible, so that should make it fairly easy for me to finish the series next year. The narrator for the series is fantastic, so I knew that I wanted to listen to the audiobook for the rest of the series. I listened to the first one too. This is an adult grimdark fantasy, and I really enjoyed the characters we were introduced to in the first book. The characters were really interesting and the world was really interesting. The first book was lacking a little bit in the area of plot, but I hear that that improves through the rest of the series and that things really come together before the end of the trilogy. And I've just heard such good things about Joe Abercrombie in general, and I really want to get into him. Or get into his books, I mean. The next series that I have already started and feel like I can finish before 2020 is over may not come as a surprise to any of you guys, but it is the Lightbringer series by Brent Weeks. I am currently, at the time of filming, in the middle of the third book in the series. It's a 5-book series. I've read all 3, or 2.5 this year in 2019, so I feel pretty good about reading the final 2 next year in 2020. This is an adult high fantasy, also grimdark, or at least I think it's grimdark, although I'm not sure if I've really heard people describe it that way. What most people talk about for this series is the really cool magic system, and it is definitely a really cool magic system. If you like complex magic systems and a lot of political intrigue and morally gray characters, this might be a series that you'd really enjoy. While I do like all of those things, I actually have struggled a little bit with the series. There have been multiple times where I've considered not continuing, but Brent Weeks does put a lot of really interesting twists and turns into his stories, and especially at the end of his books that really have been hooking me and make me want to continue on to the next book. So even though I've had a little bit of a rocky time with the series, I do see myself seeing it through to the end because I am invested enough in the plot that I need to know what happens. And I'm personally just not one of those people who can go to like a wiki and look up spoilers. I have never been the kind of person to do that. No judgment to people who do that. I actually envy you. I wish I could just like cut the torture. Not that it's really torture, but just I wish that I could just spoil myself for the book and not make myself read the rest, because I've had so many up and downs with this series already and I'm only in the middle of book 3. But I am not one of those people, and I'm gonna make myself read the whole thing. There are moments that I am enjoying the series, but there are also moments that I'm not enjoying the series. So I don't know, it could go either way. We'll see how the rest of the series goes. And next on my list, I have the Witcher series by Andrzej Sapkowski. I have read the first 2 books in this series, which are actually both collections of short stories, and I felt pretty mediocre about them. I thought they were interesting, but I didn't love them. Since then, I have played a lot of the video game, and the show just came out. At the time of filming, I have watched 1 episode of the show. I felt kind of lukewarm about it. There were things that I liked and things that I was like, okay about, but I'm still very interested in watching more. I definitely want to see where the story goes, and I'm thinking that the show might get me re-excited about the book series and I can get back into it. I think there are 5 books, so I think I need to read 3, 4, and 5, but don't quote me on that. I have kind of toyed with the idea of going back and rereading the first 2 collection of short stories. I haven't totally decided whether or not I'm going to do that. If I do that, it will make it harder for me to finish the series by the end of 2020, but depending on how I feel after I finish watching the TV show, I will either pick up the 3rd book or I'll go back to the beginning. Speaking of going back to the beginning, I have 4 series that I started a long time ago and I still want to finish, but it's been so long since I've read these books that I need to go back to the beginning to finish them. And these are going to be the ones that are probably going to be the hardest for me to finish by the end of the year, because I basically need to read the whole series, even though some of the books in the series are going to be rereads. These are all YA series. The first one I'll mention is The Last Magician by Lisa Maxwell. I read The Last Magician right when it came out. I think I had an advanced reader copy. I read it while I was on a vacation in New York City, and the story is set in New York City, and I just had such a great reading experience with it. It's like a historical fantasy. It's set during the 20s in New York City. In addition to magic, there's actually time travel. Actually, it's magical time travel and not like scientific time travel, which I thought was so cool. It's also a bit of a heist or a con story, which I absolutely love. It was so much fun to read, and I haven't continued on in the series. I was going to read the next book, but then the 3rd and final book, the publication date got pushed an extra year, and I decided just to wait until the 3rd book came out. And the 3rd and final book is coming out in April of 2020. So it is time for me to reread that first book and continue on in the rest of the series and find out what happens to these characters. And I'm very excited about finishing this series. Another series that I need to reread the first book to be able to read the next 2 books won't come as a surprise to many of you because it was on my winter TBR, and that is Under the Never Sky by Veronica Rossi. This is a YA sci-fi trilogy set on a different planet. I don't remember a whole lot about the first book except that I really liked it. I know that humans on this other planet live in like these dome-like structures because the outside is like inhospitable, and then there was like magic, or there was a lightning storm. I don't know. I remember I really liked it and I want to finish the series, but I don't remember enough, obviously, of the first book to read the second one. So I need to start over. I'm hoping to read the first book in this trilogy in early 2020 and finish it before 2020 is over. Another series that I'm hoping to finish before the end of 2020 that won't be a surprise to you guys is The Young Elites by Marie Lu. This series I've read the first 2 books in, and I originally wanted to finish it in 2019. I actually checked out and started reading the 3rd book in the series earlier this year, only to realize I had no idea what was going on and that I couldn't read it. I needed to reread the first 2 books. I tried to go to a recap website and refresh myself on what had happened in those first 2 books, but I just wasn't getting a good sense of the characters and it wasn't satisfying me, so I knew that I needed to start the series over. This is a YA high fantasy that has a little bit of a historical feel, and it's set in a world where there was some disease that killed a lot of the children, but some of the children that survived this disease develop these magical powers that people are scared of. And the main character in our story is one of those kids who survived the disease and has some sort of powers. I remember really enjoying the first 2 books in the series, and I want to see it to the end. I want to know what happens at the end of the series, but I'm just going to have to start over to do that. And then the last series that I need to start over to be able to continue is the Red Queen series by Victoria Aveyard. I have read the first 2 books in this series. I read the second one back in 2016, and at the time it was an unfinished series, so I kind of was waiting for the series to be finished. It's a 4-book series, and the last book came out in 2018, so I definitely could have restarted the series sooner than now, but it's just been sitting on my list of series that I'm currently reading, and I've definitely been eyeing it, but the idea of having to reread the first 2 books has been putting me off. So I'm putting the series on this list so that hopefully I will be more motivated to pick up that first book again and continue on with the rest of the series. This is a YA high fantasy that has a bit of a dystopian feel, and it kind of has mixed reviews out there. I feel like it gets a little bit of a bad rap for being very tropey, but a lot of the tropes in it are ones that I personally really like, and I remember enjoying the first 2 books, despite hearing some of those mixed reviews. So I do want to see the rest of the series through, and hopefully I can do that in 2020. Like I said, those last series that I mentioned where I have to read the whole thing will be hard to finish before the end of the year, so with 3 of these 10 series being really easy to finish at the beginning of the year, hopefully I can finish all of them. Like I said, if I don't finish all 10, I'm not going to be kicking myself. As long as I make progress on this list, I will be really happy. If you guys have read any of these series, let me know what you thought of them down in the comment section. Or let me know what are some series that you're hoping to finish in 2020. Do you have any series that you're having to reread to be able to continue? Because obviously I do. If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more bookish content. That is all I have for now. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, bookworms, keep reading. Bye. First I'm going to talk about, first I have City, and the story is set. That's not the name of the series, is it? I forgot to take a thumbnail. Fuck.